right, 7th graders, welcome to your first homework assignment here. Please take the notes on the note sheet that I provided for you today in class and have it signed and bring it back tomorrow. So let's get started. So today we're learning about integers and absolute value. So first of all, what are integers? So I don't know if you remember, but last year we did this nice little bubble diagram where we start with the counting numbers, okay? Counting numbers. And the counting numbers were like in the inner bubble. And they were like starting with 1, 2, 3, and so forth for all eternity. So the next level out was the whole numbers. And the whole numbers were the same as counting numbers, but they also included 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And the whole numbers within themselves include the counting numbers. So you see how 1, 2, 3 is in the whole numbers also, but whole numbers also have 0. So the next thing, the next level out is going to be the integers. And integers include all of the whole numbers, but they also include the negative numbers. We learned a little bit about negative numbers last year. So, it's from all the negative eternity, which is what the 3 dots mean. So, and then they will have numbers like -3, -2, -1, but they will also have 0, 1, 2, 3, and it will continue for all eternity also. Now, all the counting numbers are integers. All counting numbers are whole numbers. All whole numbers and counting numbers are integers, but not all integers are whole numbers, and not all integers are counting numbers, because negative numbers can't be whole, and negative numbers and 0 cannot be counted. So let's move on. So let's talk about the opposites a little bit. So the opposites here, I have, your number line that you're used to looking at for years probably. So for example, I'm going to graph on this number line, like I'm going to find 2 right here. So I want to find the opposite of 2. Now the opposite just means I put a negative in front of it. So like if I said, I want opposite of 2 is the same as -2. So -2 is the same as opposite of 2. So for example, if I want the opposite of I'll say 5. So the opposite of 5 is going to be -5. So 2 and -2 are opposites, 5 and -5 are opposites. So now what if I want an opposite of a negative number? Like say I want the opposite of -8. Well, opposite of -8, I just look on the other side of 0 and I find the positive 8. Now, don't let it confuse you, because sometimes you will see things like -8. Well, what the heck does this mean? Well, read your negative sign as the word opposite. Opposite of -8. Well, what is the opposite of -8? We just talked about it. It's positive 8. So read this as opposite of -8 equals positive 8. Let's talk about absolute value a little bit. Now, absolute value is simply the distance between, from 0 to that number. So again, if I have a number line here, I didn't put a pretty one on here. So say I have 0, 1, 2 over here, and I have 0, -1, -2 over here. Well, if I want the absolute value, now these are absolute value symbols. If I want absolute value of 1, I'm going to write it like this so you can tell the difference. If I want absolute value of 1, I just need the distance from 1 to 0. So, and distance from 1 to 0 is just 1. Now, if I want an absolute value of -2, I want, so absolute value just means distance, to 0. So if I want absolute value of -2, I just want the distance between -2 and 0, and that distance is 1, 2. Now, distance cannot be negative. You cannot hike -47 miles. You cannot drive -30 miles to go to Reading. So distance is always positive. So when you do absolute values and you make them into integers, they will always be positive. Never put a negative sign in front of it. Now, if I have a negative absolute value of, no, let's say 3. So again, read this as opposite. Don't let it confuse you. So I just need opposite of absolute value of 3. So first of all, what is absolute value of 3? There's 3. So it's just distance between 3 and 0. 1, 2, 3. So it's just going to be 3. But I want the opposite of it. Opposite means it's going to be over here, the -3. Okay? So I'm just going to put that negative sign on there. So if the negative sign is outside of the absolute value symbols, it will stay with the number. In the real world, you can see these things on things like the thermometer. So right here, I have the temperature, what, about 25 degrees? So if you can tell right there. So you see how there's my 0. These are my negative numbers. These are my positive numbers. So here the temperature is positive 25. Okay, if I wanted the opposite of that temperature, it would be negative 25. If I wanted the absolute value of that temperature, I would just, it would be somewhere down here. I would just look at the distance, and the distance is still 25, and remember, it cannot be negative. You can also do this with the sea level. For example, right here, the depth is, now let's go right here. The depth is about, 500. Now, we can make these negative because they're below sea level. These are above sea level. They're positive. So I can say the depth here is negative 500. So now if I want the distance here, the distance cannot be negative. So if I want the absolute value of -500, it will just be 500. So the height of this mountain, this is going to be real bad. I don't know, let's say, 1,750 meters. So this is positive because it's above sea level. And if I want absolute value of this, again, absolute value is always positive because it's distance. So it will just simply be 1,750 meters. Okay, so let's do some of these together quick. So $10 earned. Now, if you're increasing in something, you're gaining something, it will be positive numbers. So if you're below 0, below sea level, losing something, they're going to be negative numbers. So $10 earned is going to be earned. You're getting more, so it's going to be positive 10. Now, 3 degrees below 0. So if it's below 0, they're going to be negative. Think about your thermometer, so -3. Try these on your own. Pause the video and then push play again and see if you got it right. So let's see if you got these right. So if I said that I lost 5 pounds, I wish. So I'm losing something, which means it's going to be negative. So -5. Now, if it got 10 degrees warmer today, warmer means the temperature increased, so it's going to be positive 10. Let's try these together. So we're going to learn to write the opposites of the numbers. So you can use the number line if you want to. I'm going to show you how to do it without it. So to write the opposite of the number, you will either, if it's negative, you take away the negative. If it's positive, you make it negative. So this is -8. The opposite of -8 is +8. 9 is positive. So the opposite of +9 is -9. Try these on your own, pause the video, and then see if you got these right. So let's see if you did get these right. So the opposite of 16. Now, don't let the parentheses confuse you. These parentheses, in this case, don't do anything. They're just there as an abstraction. So -16, if it's negative, to get the opposite, you make it positive. Here, double negative. So read this as opposite. What is the opposite of -7? So the opposite of -7 is +7. But I want the opposite of that. So the opposite of +7 is -7. You can play this over again if this confused you. Let's do these together now. Last couple examples. So we're going to get our absolute values into just simple integer form. Now remember, absolute value just means distance to 0. So how far away from 0 is -7? Distance cannot be negative, so it has to be positive. So it's just 7 units away. The absolute value of 6, again, just distance to 0. Distance cannot be negative. So the distance from 6 to 0 is just 6. Try these on your own again, and then check if you got them right. So let's see, again, throwing curveballs at you. So negative, absolute value of -9. So read this as opposite. So opposite of the absolute value of -9. So let's keep that negative with us. That means opposite. And figure out what this absolute value of -9 is. Distance to 0, so that's just 9. And we already have our opposite here, so it's just -9. The opposite of the absolute value of 5. Take this negative along with you, and let's just figure out what the absolute value of 5 is. Absolute value of 5 is just the distance between 5 and 0, which is 5 units. I got my opposite right here, and here we go. So feel free to play this over and over until you really get this internalized a little bit better. If you have any questions, you can ask me tomorrow. Make sure you fill out your note sheet, make sure you get it signed, and bring it back to class tomorrow so you can get full credit. See you tomorrow.